You know, it's funny, like many of you, I often see pics of someone's latest and greatest gaming setup, and I'm guilty of it too. I often have the Neo Geo collection in the background, and I like rearranging what is on top of the shelves to change the appearance of the room up. And let's be honest, that's not for anyone other than myself. No one really cares what's out and what isn't, and I'm usually the only one to ever be in this room. But one of the things that does interest me is when I see pics of someone's hardware layout. You know, like the systems that they have connected to a display. I always take a little extra time to look that over. Like, I have Contra figures that I bought because they're cool, and you can look at them and think what you will, but surprise, I like Contra. So do 10 million other people. Doesn't really tell you all that much about me. So the same thing can sort of be applied to hardware. In its heyday, Nintendo sold over 30 million units of its little 8-bit wonder box, so not totally surprising to see someone's setup include a Nintendo. Same can be said for some of the other big hitters of the time, but that's where things start to get a little interesting because you might see variations or alternatives in their place. You guys know I love the Sega CD. I was enamored by the full motion video craze and kept thinking that games like that would eventually spin their own genre once perfected. And that, of course, was only part of the charm, as there were many other worthy titles available on the Sega CD that weren't full motion video. But here in 2020, convenience, at least in the console world, has become king for me. My Sega CD setup is Analog's Mega SG paired with Terra Onion's Mega SD. FPGA hardware emulation at its finest, no scalers involved, 1080p output to my digital display, and every Genesis and Sega CD is at my disposal without getting up to switch carts or discs. So the interesting thing there isn't necessarily the hardware itself, which is no doubt exceptional, but the fact that that's what I'm okay with for my Sega CD option. Now, some people might not be okay with that. They may want the original OG setup and have it running to a CRT. Others may be perfectly fine with the Genesis Classic or a hacked version of that running their own games. And hell, even the Retro Pi is a viable Sega CD option for the right person. It's a balance of both importance, nostalgia, and of course, budget. So I'm going to take it a step further now because this is something that isn't always apparent. It's not something you know from looking at a picture, and maybe this is just a quirk of mine. Maybe it's a negative side of me, the dark side, that side of me that calls out flaws, prompting nasty responses in comment sections. I often look at people's setups and I wonder, what don't they have hooked up? Now that, to me, is almost more interesting than what is connected. What consoles or hardware do they have complete access to that, for whatever reason, just aren't worthy of being connected? And wow, that really brings things into perspective, doesn't it? You are sitting on a presumably working console, some games, but for some reason, it's just not cracking your current lineup. Now that could be due to a lack of space, switches, inputs, or whatever, but the truth remains, if that console was as amazing to you now as the day you bought it, you damn sure find a way to get it connected, even if your television only had one input. It would be the console of choice. So with that said, I'm going to go right into my closet and show you guys what I own that just isn't doing it for me. It's so weird how excited I am to share this, and I don't know why precisely, but it's just like this little glimpse into someone's soul. What is it that they don't really like? And just go ahead and air that dirty laundry that you know you're going to get blasted for. Alright, I'm just going to come out swinging with a big one here. This is my Sega Dreamcast. Yep, it's just sitting in the closet and has been since I moved here well over a year ago. Now, I can defend this in a small part to you, a very small part, but a minor defense that I have is that most of the fighting games from this library are covered for me in arcade form. But there's a lot to like beyond that. And God, I just remember buying this on launch day, September of '99 at Media Play in Harrisburg. I was jacked to own a new Sega console, and it really was my go-to system towards the end of college for me. I played a lot of NFL 2K, NBA 2K series, Jet Grind Radio might be my all-time favorite, and of course, Crazy Taxi. I also really liked House of the Dead 2, but that means I need a CRT up here for the light gun. I don't know, it's kind of sad, but I just haven't felt the need to hook this up. I keep seeing all the new mods for it, like the HDMI, the ODE, but I keep coming back to the fact that it isn't hooked up now, so what would actually change that? And I don't know if those two things do it for me. Next up on the disconnected list, my Panasonic 3DO. Well, this is probably less of a shocker. My interest in playing a 3DO game is usually somewhere around 0. I will say though, this is my original from back in the day, and I basically sold my soul to get this after it saw its first price drop. The two great fighting ports that I have for it, I can play elsewhere. I noted earlier that I have a weird soft spot for full motion video games, and this does have a few of those. Perhaps most notably the American laser games like Mad Dog McCree, Crime Patrol, and Space Pirates. I also don't mind the light gun sections of Demolition Man as a guilty pleasure. Again though, light guns and the need for a CRT. The rest of the library here just isn't that amazing to make me want to have this hooked up and on standby. I appreciate it for its part in my personal gaming history, and every now and then it will get turned on, but for the most part, it just sits here in the closet. Now this one breaks my heart just a little. This is my Atari 2600. It's the first console that I ever owned, got it as a Christmas present, and was introduced to video games in the very early 80s. So this is the first domino, if you will. This is actually my second Atari 2600 that I modded for S-Video output because I just couldn't bear to drill my childhood original. I still have a bin full of carts for this system, a bin that contains the first ever gaming memories for me, really, but all that nostalgia isn't quite enough to earn it a top lineup spot. Space is limited, and when I crave Atari, I often have other ways of playing it. And finally, on the disconnected list, another surprise for a lot of you. Yeah, my GameCube is just sitting in the closet. I don't know what it is about this one. There's a bit of a theme here if we toss out Atari, I suppose. These are all disc-based systems that I don't have HDMI mods for. So on one hand, you could say I'm just craving that convenience factor we talked about earlier, but then again, if I really felt like I couldn't be without my GameCube, it'd be hooked up, right? I do have the original component cables for this console, so hooking it up to the RetroTink should be easy provided I stick to 480i. But I just haven't felt the need since moving. I have a pretty healthy lineup of some great titles from the years past, and like the Dreamcast, this was a go-to my final year of college. I've toyed with hacking my Wii U, a system that does make my lineup, for the ability to play GameCube games. Giving myself that option in a convenient manner sounds more ideal than hooking up another console and switching out discs. So yeah, maybe it is the disc swapping option that I just don't enjoy. I'll say this and make a final controversial claim before we close out today. The GameCube is certainly, far and away, no contest, better than having this thing hooked up. Yeah, I said it. The only reason I can fathom that the N64 is hooked up over the GameCube is because it's HDMI modded and I have the EverDrive for it, for the 3 games that are worth playing. Yeah, I said that too. Maybe that's a video for another time. So before we go, let me know in the comments what consoles aren't currently cracking your lineup and why. I really think for me, it's coming down to the whole convenience thing. If it's not HDMI and there is no flash cart or ODE installed, I'm just not bothering these days, it seems. Now that said, modding the Dreamcast for HDMI and getting the ODE installed isn't exactly a cheap venture, so I'm a little apprehensive about just jumping in on that and thinking I'll suddenly be back to loving Dreamcast. Thanks so much for watching today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later, guys.